After playing the patsy for the government cover-up, intelligence officer Jesse Marcel returns to Roswell. He's determined to get to the truth of what happened and clear his name.
Jesse Marcel is in a bizarre situation. He is the one that went to the crash site. He's the one who got his hands on the debris and realized immediately this was something different, possibly, almost probably, something extraterrestrial. And yet here he is, the fall guy.
Adding insult to injury, when Marcel was in Texas, Captain Sheridan Cavett, his junior ranking officer, filed a report supporting the weather balloon story.
Marcel tries to push back and says, hey, that's not what happened. I want you to rewrite that, tell the true story.
To which Cavett responds, if you don't like it, take it up with Washington.
It's clear Major Marcel's hands are tied. But as his son recalls, the military's position is one he refused to agree with.
There's still a feeling like there's something very unusual about this. It was not something commonplace like they would like to say weather balloon or radar target.
The Marcels, to me, are at the center of everything with the Roswell story. And any indication we can get to substantiate the claims that have been made by the Marcels just further adds to the credible, reliable testimony we have related to this incident.
Your father didn't think it was a weather balloon or a radar target?
Never did.
Jesse Marcel Jr.'s claim about his father is predicted to be true.
It's great to hear that this came back as true because it's just another thing in a consistent line of testimony from Jesse Marcel.
Did he ever suggest you weren't supposed to talk about it? Was there any kind of discussion about what was said at the base and let's not talk about this anymore in those first few days?
I don't recall that exactly, but I think the implication was there. It's over with, don't say anything more about it.
3 months after the Roswell crash, Marcel is transferred to Washington.
Jesse Marcel is given a promotion. He is assigned to be one of the intelligence specialists studying what the Soviets are doing in relation to development of their own nuclear program. He may be the fall guy, but he's somebody that they need in the system and on side.
Jesse is a strict military man. He is a career soldier, and he has to go by what he is told and what his superiors tell him to do.
Luckily for those searching for the truth, there is one vital witness unbound to a military code. Around 24 hours have passed since Roswell mortician Glenn Dennis visited the base, seeing strange activity. He's returning to Hangar 84 because he's concerned for a nurse friend who works in the hospital wing.
Glenn Dennis's friend invited him to come back to the base to meet him for lunch. She said she had something very important that she wanted to tell him.
This story is Glenn Dennis's most jaw-dropping claim for why there was a Roswell cover-up.
She looked like death on dope. She said, you won't believe what happened. She said, I've never seen anything so this. I said, well, look, you're a nurse. And I said, anytime you're in this business, you're going to see a lot of things. And I said, you may as well get used to it. She said, no, this is what it is.
Then, the words that come out of her mouth next leave Dennis absolutely stunned.
She said, this is something that no one's ever said.
48 hours after being removed from Hangar 84, Glenn Dennis returns to the airfield. He's arrived to speak with a friend, a nurse in the hangar's hospital wing. It's a conversation Dennis recalls for the shocking revelation conspiracy theorists have been trying to corroborate for almost 30 years.
There wasn't anyone around us because we kind of had a table up on the side of the office of ourselves. She was hoping that we could hear some.
Glenn has been outspoken for decades about what he has seen, and of course his testimony has been dismissed and discredited by the experts.
She said, you have to give me a sacred oath that you will not ever mention my name or not. She said, you can get me in a lot of trouble. But I'm going to tell you, you don't know where you got this. I said, what do you mean by a sacred oath? She said, I mean like cutting your arm off. That's what she told me.
Glenn asks the nurse, he said, what was going on? What did you see? But he said she was afraid to verbalize anything. She's looking around and worried somebody's gonna hear what she's telling him.
What happened, she was going into this other room to pick up some supplies. This is where the two doctors that were in there supposedly doing a preliminary autopsy on these bodies. The doctor said, you're not going anywhere, we have to have some help. She said she never smelled anything so horrible in her life. Said it was the most gruesome, most horrible sight that she'd ever seen. The smell was almost devastating.
Glenn's additional testimony from the nurse is that there was a terrible stench coming from the bodies, and they were getting sick. They were going into the hallway and then returning to complete their duties, complete their work.
The testimony of this nurse is of great import because we have somebody who is witness to an actual autopsy. So that means we have fatalities of a crash and descriptions of beings that are clearly not human. The government is in possession of extraterrestrial beings.
She said, this is something that no one's ever seen.
The alien autopsy at Roswell has always been one of the most contentious parts of the Roswell story. Reason for many skeptics to dismiss all of Glenn Dennis's testimony as untrue.
Of all the many, many witnesses with stories to tell about Roswell, his have been perhaps the ones that have been disbelieved most. If that testimony is absolutely truthful, then we are in new territory here. We are in this situation now where arguably the most extreme part of this whole tale is validated.
She said, this is something that no one's ever seen. The two doctors that were in there supposedly doing a preliminary autopsy on these bodies. She said there was 3 bodies. 2 of them were very mangled.
Can this testimony be trusted?
2 of them were very mangled.
According to the AI, Glenn Dennis is telling the truth.
This is groundbreaking. It's gonna take me a while to get my head around this. It's fascinating.
She said there was 3 bodies.
It's very difficult to find the words to react to this right now. We've got a validated testimony that there was an alien autopsy that took place, that there were bodies examined.
This is the first time and by far the most supported case with evidence that this actually occurred.